Hey y'all, this is Billy from Perma Pastures Farm. Okay, we're going to talk about something today that's, I don't know, maybe it's not discussed enough, but even when it is, and I assume that it's discussed a little too much or too often, everybody else says to me out there, hey, we want to hear your perspective on it. And I guess I do have a different perspective, just like everybody else. We're going to talk about homestead security in more of a macro view. We could get into the more detailed and nuanced things at another time, but I just want to hit the big points today, okay? So when I think of security, it always takes me back to the Army to a certain extent. And I think of the training that I had in certain schools where you were taught what was called the 5 principles of patrolling. And even though I was taught that years ago, I still use it to this day. I govern a lot of what I do and a lot of other training that I've had. To this day, I use all that stuff. And one of them is an acronym we learned, and it can be said a number of ways, but it was President Reagan can't sing cadence. Now, what does that mean? President Reagan can't sing cadence. Like I said, there's other blue ways of saying that same acronym, but what it stands for is planning, recon, control, security, and common sense. The 5 principles of patrolling. Now, whether or not they teach it today, I don't know. It's been a long time since I've been in the game. But it was always a really good way from a homestead perspective to govern how we do just about everything here. And that was a good overview. So planning, in terms of security. Okay, planning. Well, you all know the cliches concerned with planning. You know, fail to plan to fail. You know all that. But in this concern, I'm saying planning not just the security of your home, but planning also the other things that really reach into security as well, such as food and the other things, which we'll get to in a minute. But right off the bat, under the planning, from the very beginning, a perimeter fence was always in the works. Now, we've always talked about it in terms of keeping animals in. And believe it or not, that is a huge component. Now, remember, everybody talks about borders and securing a border and things of that nature, and I'm not going to tell you where I stand on any of that stuff, but I will say, as a person who was trained extensively about how to put in borders that work, there's 3 things that have to happen, okay? You have to have an obstruction. Like, let's say in this case, you got a gate, right? To make it very, very, very secure as you could possibly make it, we have to have an obstruction, a gate, a fence, a minefield. It can be anything. But that's not enough. It's never enough. It has to be observed, and it has to be covered by a threat. So you need an obstacle, it has to be observed, and it can't just be that obstacle. It has to be covered by a threat. So on your homestead, what is that? That obstacle in my case is this gate up front, right? Now, why is that important? Even though you could probably drive right in it. Now, if I didn't have it turned off right now, I'd probably get zapped with about 8,000 volts. So that's not good. But before I had this gate, you know what I had before then? I would have, how do I say this politely? I would have people that would come by this place, drive all the way up the side of this mountain to my house. And in one occasion, there was a person, very shady people up here selling meat in freezers out the back of their truck. And when I looked at the meat, it looked like, I'm not sure Hannibal Lecter cut it up or Jeffrey Dahmer. For that matter, it didn't look like, I'm a butcher and I had no idea where this meat looked like it came from or the animal that it came from, but they were selling it out of the back of their truck. You know what else I had? I had this clown come up here. He probably was a crackhead, but he rolled up all the way up to my house with the garage door open and everything else there. And he came, you're not even going to believe this, but the dude said he was selling encyclopedias. In 2021, he's going door to door selling encyclopedias in one of the most rural parts of these mountains. You believe in that? Because I ain't. I sent him on the first thing smoking out of here. After I had after I got this guy to sit here and tell me the most bizarre story in the world. Well, guess what hasn't happened since then? Ever since I put in this gate, which frankly, a lot of people don't even know what it is. Ever since I put this gate in, accidental passers-by up onto my property have dropped to 0. In fact, the people I know think twice about just driving through here because they don't know what it is. Very few people have seen anything like this. They don't realize, A sad UPS driver or two has been up here and probably got Kentucky Fried a couple of times because I don't have a sign up here that says, and I need to get one up here that says high voltage. Point being is that it's a visual obstruction, and people fundamentally think twice about passing anything that has a gate on it. Yeah, there are those people that will, blast through it, but by and large, people fundamentally see a gate and they think twice about going through it. Okay. Also, the fencing on the outside. Okay, so I got the fence, I got the obstruction. Is it covered by threat? Yeah, not right now, but in the very near future, my dog Milk Boy will have full access of this place. And he's being trained in the process. And I don't cover a whole lot of his training, but he's being trained in the process of knowing what's his and what he is to defend. So there's my eyes. And you know what? Great Pyrenees fundamentally have a loud bark. And that's the biggest thing that I need a dog to do. Not attack somebody, but to alert us when somebody's here, whether it be friend or foe. They know exactly, for a whole variety of reasons. Dogs know if you're up to no good. That's why if my dog doesn't like you, you ain't stepping foot on this place. And there's a whole variety of reasons as to why. But anyway, this perimeter fence that goes all the way around for the most part, there's one small piece in the back that we have yet to do. That's also part of the security of this place. It's a security to keep, to a certain extent. If anything's determined enough, they're going to go through. Most people, if you got a set of Kleins in your pocket, you can bust right through. But like I said, the human mind is fundamentally hardwired to see a fence as a deterrent. So they think twice about it. Avenues of approach. Okay, so where do you live? I can't possibly cover that for where you live. I can cover it for where I live, and I can tell you how I deal with it. Avenues of approach, meaning the best way somebody can access your place. Okay, you want that to be observed some way or another, whether it's your dog, whether it's your own site, whether it's cameras. No matter what you have, you should have at least some, even if you put signs up, and I've seen them before that says, hey, this property is under surveillance. Well, it's your property, whether it is or isn't. It could be mechanical, it could be physical surveillance with your own two eyes. It could be surveillance in the form of a camera that you have. And these days, they're ubiquitous and cheap. You can find them anywhere right now. So you want to make sure you have that, preferably at your entrance. You don't want to present yourself as a soft target. And especially in these times where you hear all these things going on in terms of food, biosecurity hacks, food hacks, all these different things, cruise ships getting stuck in the middle of canals and stuff these days. Just today, I called about a chainsaw I had repaired or was having repaired, and they're telling me that it's going to be another month and a half probably before I get it back, because the smallest part that they would ordinarily have on demand, that they would ordinarily have right there in the warehouse, can't get it because it's coming overseas and everything's locked up right now. Contrived? Maybe. Probably. Either way, it doesn't matter. It's still a concern. It's something that you can't readily get your hands on. So when it comes to these security measures, think first of all, planning. Okay, that's number one. But right there, you might want to think about anybody that could just walk up on your place. What do they have as a deterrent? It could be a hedgerow. It could be a natural deterrent. Believe me, thorn bushes. They used them in World War II. They had hedgerows, and they worked. They worked in many ways. They had to have specialized tanks just to get through those things. There are natural things you could even put in and use in those ways. Now, they'll keep in animals. They'll keep people out. In some places in Africa, they even use natural terrain and things like that to be able to use your thing as a deterrent. So I've gone on long and hard about that. Let's talk about another means of security. Planning, recon, control, security, and common sense. Remember that. They can absolutely save your life. Now, I will go back to say that in certain schools in the military, in the Army, that you would pass whatever mission you were given as long as you kept those 5 principles of patrolling. As long as you didn't compromise any of those, you would pass. So there were a wide array and variations of techniques to get to the same place. So just remember that President Reagan can't sing cadence, and apply it to your place, okay? Because it can be. Okay, the next thing we're going to talk about is food security. Now, I'm going to take a little different tack than a lot of people would right now. Everybody is telling you to do what we're doing right here. We got trellises, we got food forests, we got bees over there, we got meat birds up there, we got layers, we got it all right here. And there's a whole gang of things up in these woods that I ain't even talking about. So what am I talking about here in terms of food security? It seems like it's, pretty self-evident. Okay, let me back up just a little bit before you get to this place, okay? And I'm addressing most of the people that are new to this space, that are new to homesteading, preparedness, all these things. You folks, and in fact, some of you that have been at this a while, let me just get you to take a step back. Everybody says grow your food, and I'm one of them, and you should. But before that, if you're just getting into this space, you need to go back and watch that video we made of how to feed yourself for like 72 days on $100. We did that video a while back. So if you're concerned, if you're just getting into this, remember the prime directive of permaculture is to take full ownership, responsibility of yourself, your family, their security, their well-being. Well, you're not just going to grow this stuff overnight. That's why these survival seed companies get on my nerves, because what are you going to do? Wait for the bottom to fall out, some calamity to happen, and then all of a sudden you're going to put the seeds in the ground, seeds that aren't adapted to your place at all, which takes time. Ask any gardener that's got any sense. You're not just going to put them in the ground and you're going to have a bumper crop of whatever you put in there. It doesn't work that way. It takes practice. I recently did a consultation for a person where I explained that very thing. They're jumping in full steam ahead. And they will tell you that just taking seed packs out of the ground, putting them in there, it takes time. So what do you do at first? Your food security, you need to get on the first thing smoking, if this is a concern for you, and go out there, first of all, follow the advice we did. And there's a number of other really good people out there that can give you advice on that. Get beans and rice, they're cheap. I think a 50-pound bag at Sam's is somewhere, it's under 20 bucks. You dig? Okay, beans, very cheap as well. Consider sources shelf-stable fat. Okay, I can find carbs in nature. I can find protein in nature. Hardest thing to find in nature is fat. It's 9 calories per gram, whereas carbs and protein are only 4. So put back beans and rice. Put back some shelf-stable fat. Get yourself off and running with some of that stuff first. Then put yourself full steam ahead in how you grow food. Guerrilla garden. Find those places. If you live even in a public place, let's say it's an apartment complex or anything like that, I guarantee you there's enough places out there in those woods or wherever else where you could grow food in open air, in plain sight, and people will walk by it. In fact, the overwhelming majority of people that die in the wilderness were surrounded by food and they had no idea. Here's a good idea. Plant sweet potatoes in a very obvious area, especially here in North Carolina. You know what most people would think it was? Honestly, they would think that it was nothing more than ivy growing on the ground if you get them thick enough. Those sweet potato slips growing everywhere, they're going to think it's just invasive ivy. And you could have a bumper crop of sweet potatoes in a very obvious place and nobody would even know it. Just a small example. But what I'm saying, first and foremost, get yourself secure and put back some storable stuff, then get yourself off and running in these other things. Because if something were to jump off tomorrow, I guarantee you, you're not going to fast 120 days waiting for something to pop up. Even 60 days waiting on a radish. It's going to take some time. So get your food security all squared away. Water. There's a lot of other people out there. I'm already going long in the tooth because I could talk all day about all these subjects. Water. Remember, 2 is 1 and 1 is none in terms of everything, in terms of your food, but most importantly, in concerning your water. Think about your sources of water. Do you have rainwater catchment on your roof? It's not that hard to do. Do you have, let's say, a pond, or where we are, we're surrounded by water. We got streams over here. We got, we got all sources. I don't want to go into too many details about my own thing, but you can suffice it to say that everything from a well to running water in multiple places, storable water in multiple places. There are tons of information out there. Even if you're living in a small environment, there's even bladders you can put in your bathtub if you have to. Storing some water. We take advantage of water, especially in a place like the United States. But in certain places, in a lot of places right now, people are starting to get to the hard reality that it's not as plentiful and ubiquitous as it once used to be. So think about your water storage and how to purify water also. Like I said, I'm not giving you nitty-gritty details because everything I'm talking about in this video would have to be covered Honestly, from the top of my head, I could probably do a 30-minute dissertation on every single one of them because I've thought long and hard about this. I've studied long and hard about this. Just kind of giving you the overviews of things to think about. Now let's move on to the next one. All right, I'm just going to say one more thing about food before I move on to the next one. Some of that food doesn't necessarily have to be in your freezer, okay? You can leave it on the hoof the way I do, and then I can harvest it as I need it. You can do it with your meat birds. You can do it with your layers. That's why I use dual purpose birds. You can leave that meat on the hoof, especially if it's an animal like the ones behind me that eat grass, that I don't put any money into. They could be this way long time, indefinitely, and be harvested as I need them. All right, y'all, here's a big one here, and I very seldom hear anybody talk about this, and that's your friends and family, okay? Now, you see these sheep here behind me? Now, let me just give you an example. Okay, if I have a sheep that is jumping the fence, or is creating a disruption, or is a bad influence on the others, it'll have to be separated. Ultimately, it's gonna go in that cook pot. Same thing if I got a chicken that is violent, A, I'm not gonna reproduce it, and number two, he's gonna go in the cook pot. If I got a cow that is violent, misbehaving, doesn't behave the way I want it to, same way, you're gonna go in the freezer. No matter the animal, right? So if I have so little intolerance for bad behavior in animals, why on earth would I ever put up with it in what should be a high-functioning human being? But we all do. We got friends and family that may be complete nincompoops, but we hang out with them because they're friends and family. Okay? In a security situation, are those the kind of people you want around you? I don't know. That's up for you to decide. But in my case, there are people that have been around me, both friends and family, that I've had to distance myself from. Maybe they're going in another direction. Maybe they are, they look for selfish gain. Maybe they're the kind of people that will show up for harvest, but don't bother to put in any work when it come to put in, when it came time to put foot to butt, getting the work done. Those kinds of people. People that say, in the event of a crisis, oh, and I quote, and I've heard this one before, well, I got a gun, I'll just go out there and take what I want. If you have the audacity to say such things, you're not the kind of person I want to be with anyway in that type of thing, in any kind of situation, really. If that's your solution to a problem, instead of saying, hey, like the sons of Issachar, I see this problem and I'm going to make preparations long before. I want to be that person. I don't want to be the person that resorts to mayhem and violence in the event of some calamity, okay? So consider the people you have close to you. And honestly, recently, I have broken fellowship with people that honestly, I wish no ill will towards, but if we're not walking in the same direction, then maybe you ought to just walk your own and I'll go my way too. I won't wish you any ill. It's just I can't associate with you because I see parts of your character that just don't overlay well with my own or my family. So you want to make sure you want to be really careful about your associations, and most importantly, where you have those things. Like when I was with Danny at Deep South, it didn't take long for us to both realize we're going to be really great friends. But you know what? He made it abundantly clear to me that there's parts of that property, no matter how good of friends we are, I'm not going to see. And I only respected him more because you know what? If he were to come here, there's parts that I wouldn't show him unless he was living here on this property. It's just wise. It's prudent. It's the smart thing to do is that you don't give somebody the inner workings of your keep. You only give them so much, and that's about it. So in terms of security, be real mindful who knows where you have what. Everything you see, you're thinking, okay, well, you got a YouTube, Jack. You're telling everybody everything. Oh, no, I ain't. There's a whole lot you don't know, and that's by design. And there's nothing, I'm really careful about who I say. I'm very careful about who I tell what I have and where it is. In fact, in this whole thing, you're never going to hear me talk about firearms. There's a reason for that, because I don't have to. I don't need to. Those are things that are already largely covered by a number of other people. I'm trying to give you maybe fill in those gaps of things you've not considered, but consider your associations. All right, last thing I'm going to talk about here, and you're going to think, what does that have anything to do with security? And that is my faith, okay? And I suspect there's a number of you out there that have it also. At the end of the day, Somebody might be thinking, what on earth does faith have anything to do with security? It has everything to do with security. Really, at the end of the day, if I'm not really secure of what happens to me, if the very worst happens, then what is all of this for? I mean, if all that we're seeing unfold right now isn't, like John B. Wells said, if this isn't a battle between good and evil, then none of it makes any sense. So to me, in terms of security, my faith means everything, because it's all rooted and grounded in that. In fact, I really need to talk about it more and what that means to me. But in terms of security and in terms of faith, it gives you a sense of grounding, of knowing that no matter what happens, that there is hope beyond, at least in my faith. Yours may be different. I'm just saying from where I stand, and also those around you. Because honestly, let's say you have a faith and you may be unequally yoked with a person who doesn't. Well, in those times of crisis, should you come upon them, then you may have two very different modes and means of how you want to deal with that. So you want to be careful. And also in those terms, you want to be linked up with people that you can, if need be, commiserate with in hard times. Maybe you didn't plan enough. Maybe you didn't listen to me and go out there and buy those beans and rice, and now you're suffering. Maybe you're hungry. Well, you know, it's sure, I'm trying not, the only thing I got left in some cases is my sense of humor, and it can be dark sometimes. But honestly, if you have nothing else left, then honestly, you've been in those positions. I have too, where nothing changes in your world, but you just felt better just by praying. You may be, like Pastor David Langford says, there may not be a thing in your world that changes, but just because of your faith and you went and prayed, you felt better for a little while. You may have had the same yoke all over you. You may have had the same problems, but just by praying, you alleviated and gave yourself at least a certain degree of relief. You know what? In the coming times, that might be very well necessary. I'm not gonna paint any gloom and doom, because I think it's out there. And I'm not gonna go on about it, because if honestly, at this point, you can't see it with your own two eyes, then there is nothing I'm gonna say on this YouTube channel that's gonna make you see it. I sat here for years beating my head against the wall trying to get people to see what I thought was painfully obvious. But people seem they seem reluctant to consider honest counsel and wisdom. So I'm not gonna waste my breath talking about it. But in terms of security, my faith means everything to me. Folks, I'll try to bring it full circle here and say, once again, President Reagan can't sing cadence. Planning, recon, control, security, common sense. 5 principles of patrolling. See how they work. Ask yourself, take each one of those elements, apply it to everything I just talked about and more. I'm just giving you the brief, very small overview of everything. Apply the 5 principles of patrolling to your life, to your farm, to your homestead, wherever you are, your apartment, it doesn't matter. Take all those things, put them together, and see how they apply to you. You'll be shocked at what you're able to come up with if you use that metric to govern how you run your homestead and every other place. Folks, I could go on and on. I'm going to have to cut this short because, frankly, you don't want to hear me go for 3 hours on this, because I could. So until next time, this is Billy, the Permaculture Pimp Daddy, where PIMP stands for Permaculture is my passion. We'll see you next time.